So, George, hi. Welcome. We have been talking about the game already yesterday.
Okay, and now it's basically...
What's the special deal about the game?
Okay, you are basically every... But I can just say that basically...
Sounds amazing.
So basically, my game Ascendum was part of Austrian Steam sale last month, and as you can see, I was interviewed by guys from Whoop, and they also played the game on stream. So if you want to experience my amazing internet, me saying basically a lot of times, or see some Ascendum gameplay, check out the link in the description below. And also, please wishlist the game. Now we can officially start with the video. Hello, Kaikus here, and welcome to the second devlog of my university project. It has been around 40 days from the last devlog, so I have a couple of new stuff to share, like character update, melee redesign, more arrows, more traps, 13 enemies, 2 bosses, arena encounter, village, shop, rune system, rune effects, art direction, 15 rooms with art, portals, and of course rocks and grass. So we are not going to waste time anymore and go on with the progress. Let's start with the character. The first major update was to the theme of the character, since before he was kinda shooting some random blue lasers. Now the game focuses more on elements, and the character is using arcane magic for arrows and sword. I also quickly added these spell circles to everything, since it adds a little bit more magic to everything. If you wonder how I made this, I just made this simple shape in Blender, unwrapped the UVs like this, and then went into Photoshop and drew some glowing runes. In white, of course, so that I can change the colors in Unity. And then I just spawned the mesh as a particle system and make it rotate and scale. I also added 2 new arrow abilities, which are Arcane and Holy Arrows. Holy Arrow explodes on impact and leaves the sphere that explodes 2 more times, increasing the damage with every explosion, making it the highest damage arrow ability that you can throw, if you can keep the enemies inside the radius, which is not that easy. However, that's why it combos quite well with the shadow trap that pulls enemies towards the center, since everybody is going to get damage with all 3 parts of the explosion. Second arrow ability is the Arcane Arrow, and since I always thought that Arcane should be weirder than your basic elements like fire, this ability leaves a portal that fires 5 of your basic shots in the direction. Keep in mind that this portal fires copies of your basic shots, so upgrading your basic attacks will boost this ability as well. And we also have a new trap, a Holy Trap, which is not technically a trap since it fires off the effect immediately, so it's more like a bomb than anything else, but whatever, we are not going to go into logic that much right now. This trap spawns a protective shield that blocks all enemy projectiles, so you're probably going to target yourself with it. However, you can also confuse the ranged enemy by throwing it on top of him, since he is going to be useless for the duration of the trap. While playtesting, I also figured out that I'm barely using arrow abilities simply because they cost 2 energy bars, and I would always spend that on a trap or a heal instead, which is a shame because arrow abilities are really nice. So to fix that, I brought down the cost of arrows from 2 to 1 energy bar. This might seem like a simple number change, but this actually changes a lot, since now you are able to shoot up to 3 arrow abilities in a row if you have full energy, which wasn't really possible before. I quickly realized that spamming is a thing and that I don't want to melt the computers of players with all of the particle effects on the screen, so I decided to add a cast time to most of the arrow abilities. This means that you can technically fire off 3 arrow abilities in a row, but each will have a little cast time, so it won't be that spammy, I hope. And I think this seems more impactful and clearer overall, since you really feel when you are using the ability compared to the older version where you just shot another arrow. You remember that before, when you shoot an arrow, it sticks into the target and then explodes after a slight delay? Well, sadly I had to remove that, since it didn't quite feel satisfying to epically cast an arrow and then wait again for the actual damage. However, I kept that mechanic for the shadow arrows, so this one doesn't have a cast time, but this delay kinda serves the same purpose. And it also makes this one more unique compared to the others. With that done, now the whole ability system is much cleaner and more understandable, since every single ability is costing 1 energy bar, which are heal, trap, and arrow abilities. Another thing that I realized when other people playtested the game is that they are not really using a melee attack at all, since it's much easier to just stay far away and shoot all the time. This doesn't sound like a big problem, but the question is, then why does the melee attack even exist? My initial idea was to combine the melee and ranged attacks and go in and out of fights and not just shoot from far away. So I made a slight change. Before, the player was shooting 5 arrows and then automatically recharging for 1 second. Now the player again shoots 5 arrows but then enters the melee mode, where the character has his sword out. Now you have to slash an enemy with a melee attack in order to recharge your ammo. Of course, in order for this to work, I had to make some additions like increase the range of the melee attack and make it wider so it's easier to hit. And I also added a movement speed bonus when you are in melee mode so that you can get to your target easier. This in fact turned out to be a really nice addition, since you can force the melee mode by shooting all of the arrows and then use the movement speed boost to run around the world faster or run away from enemies and get a quick heal if you want. Also, forcing the player to go closer made quite an interesting interactions with ranged enemies, since they are already running away from you constantly. I'm quite happy how this turned out. It might take some balancing to make it easier to play, since I feel like it's really hard right now and the game is quite fast, but that's the problem for the future me. Of course, it wouldn't be much of a game without some progression and upgrades, so I made a rune system. The player will be able to equip up to 3 rune effects at a time, which should help on your adventure. Think of one rune as a charm in Hollow Knight or rune fragment in my other game Mendacio, for which you can also check out the devlogs on my channel. And for this system to work, we need some runes, so I made 5 rune effects, which are a rune that makes all of your attacks deal area of effect damage in a small radius, a rune that makes your attack go through the enemies, a weird rune that reduces your ammo from 5 to 2 but makes those 2 attacks much more powerful, so overall you will deal more damage than usual, but it will force you to melee for recharge more often. A rune that spawns an arcane shield that rotates around the player and blocks enemy projectiles, and a rune that spawns an arcane orb that follows you around and damages nearby enemies. The idea with these rune effects is to make them stackable so that you are in fact able to take explosive shots and piercing shots together, and your shots will go through all of the enemies and also deal an AoE damage to everything, making it probably the best group killing strategy for now. Now let's talk about art. Last time there was kinda nothing apart from concepts. Now we have a whole first zone. It took some time experimenting, but I figured out the art direction, which seems fine. The grass is just a simple PNG and the textures are one color with some details here and there. Everybody knows that where there is grass, there are also stones and rocks, and I think it's clear how much rocks and grass mean to me, so we have to get this right. We tried a lot of different rocks, and for now we settled down for these 2 types, the flat ones that have some kind of grass on top of them, and the more rocky and pointy ones, as well as your typical mini rocks for details. I also got some alien ruins, so now we have this alien gate as well as the alien ruins to place around. With all that, I made this first test room to try out the art and to serve as an example for the other team member who is going to be making the rooms. I explained to him the techniques that I used to make this, like using cliffs for the room edges, 2 layers for grass texture, detailing, flowers, and how to bake the nav mesh for the enemies. With that clear, a level designer team member started working on the rooms. Remember this, since we are going to come back to this later. I moved on to the other stuff, like creating a portal from modular pieces, as well as a portal room. In the game, there will be 2 portals that are connected to each other so that you can travel around the map faster. With that done, I got some more models, and this time it was the village asset. Yes, I'm going to have a village somewhere in the world. So I made the village and random NPCs that are standing around. The idea is to have a shop in the village where you can spend the currency that you are collecting around the world. The items that you can buy are still up for discussion, but the more important thing is that you cannot really buy stuff if there is no shop to begin with. So I made a shop system with some ugly placeholder UI, and now you can buy items as expected. Another idea was to have a secret merchant that is going to be located somewhere in the world as well, who can sell actual abilities. In that way, you have more chance to adapt, since you will get 1 arrow ability and 1 trap ability in the world, but if you don't like it, you might visit the merchant, since he will have alternative trap and arrow abilities, making it more likely for you to get what you want. So I made the merchant room as well. For now he's just a copy and pasted guy from the village that will be changed later, but for now it's completely fine. I also made the day and night cycle that just alters between two colors and changes the ambient color of the scene over time. Quite useless but cool. And finally, I made the boss room which will adapt the exits of the room so that I can place it anywhere in the world. Yeah, by the way, we have bosses now. But let's first start with enemies, since last time there were like 2 random enemies in the game. Now I split the enemies into 6 groups, 5 of them being elementals like fire, frost, shadow, holy and nature, and the last one being alien constructs. All of the enemies and characters got this line shader now, which is not the best thing ever, but it makes the enemies more visible in all of the clutter that might happen on your screen. So from the fire gang, now we have Fire Jumper from the last time who just jumps at you, now he is a member of the fire gang. Firefighter enemy that jumps on you, slashes in the close range, but also throws fireballs when the player is running away. Firecaster, ranged enemy, which throws fireballs constantly and keeps the distance between him and the player. And the first boss of the game, the fire boss. This guy is really insane but really fun to fight. He jumps around like crazy all the time, shoots some small fireballs, throws a big fireball, and even sends out the ground shockwaves. From Shadow Gang, we have a Shadow Shield enemy that enters the shield mode and shoots a projectile. Like this, he is absorbing every single attack from the front and heals for the damage that you would deal, so make sure that you don't fire off an arrow ability in front of this guy. I like this enemy since it forces the player to react and run around it, and he doesn't have that much health, so it's really easy to kill if you know how. Shadow Cultist enemy, a ranged enemy that casts protective barrier that negates player attacks and bombards the player with projectiles from the air. This guy is a pain to deal with, but it will only appear in the later stages of the game, so don't worry. The idea is to either shoot him when he is not in the shield, or to force him out of the shield by running away a little. Since his attacks are from the air, he can actually hit you behind the wall, so be careful where you're going to heal. Shadow Shark enemy that chases the player really fast, and that's kinda... I mean, not every enemy needs to be overcomplicated. However, this enemy shows some procedural animation made by a little script that delays movement of parts, which will be used for some upcoming enemies, but it looks really nice and I like it, so I had to point it out. And currently the second boss, the Shadow boss. He is really fast, he dashes all the time, and he inherits the absorption ability from other lesser shadow enemies, so he spins and absorbs every attack at the same time. Also, after 50% health, he starts shooting projectiles in all directions with the spin, which makes a really interesting scene on your screen. From holy enemies, I only have 2 for now, and those are a holy slicer enemy, who is kinda like a really fast ninja that dashes all the time, and the holy Spartan enemy that holds a shield that blocks attacks while throwing a spear from the range. This might be one of the most annoying enemies in the game, simply because you have to get around him to even damage him, but he uses a ranged behavior, so he is running away from you constantly. If an enemy is going to be nerfed in the future, it will surely be this guy. Frost and Nature were kinda neglected for now, but there is one nature guy that heals everybody around him. This guy should probably be your main focus in fights, since he is really annoying when he starts healing everybody. And there is the newest enemy, the Frost guy, who sends out this nice frosty shockwave and burrows underground. And last but not least, the alien enemies, which are currently not the most interesting mechanically speaking, but they look the best in the game since they all activate when they see the player, and they also utilize procedural animations which make them look really smooth. We have the one from the last time, the sphere alien, and the sickest looking one, the alien squid, that uses the delayed motion I talked about for the shark enemy, but he also spins, which makes him even nicer. Again, all of them are just shooting for now, but I will try to come up with some more interesting mechanics in the future. It's just hard to imagine what they are going to do apart from shooting, but we will see. With all of these enemies, I felt like the game needs an arena encounter, because it seems like I'm adding some form of arena in every single game that I make. The arena itself is just a list of waves that spawn enemies. I also made this scriptable object that can hold different waves of enemies so that I can get a random amount of them as well as the random waves in each encounter, which makes it quite interesting and not that repetitive. Of course, this is really hard to beat, so when you enter the arena room, you will see this alien device that you can activate to actually start the encounter. If you are not ready for it, you can always come back when you are stronger. The algorithm for procedural generation also got a big update, since previous version was kinda limiting in some areas, which is the reason why I only explained the theory behind it in the previous devlog. Now I can achieve smaller and bigger rooms, control how many treasures will be there, place important rooms like village and boss rooms in a more flexible way, as well as put the abilities around, place the arena, and even connect two portal rooms with each other. I still don't know how much stuff I'm going to change here till the end, so I won't get too much into detail. However, when the game is ultimately done, I will make a full tutorial and explain how to create such an algorithm. So look forward for that if you are interested. And lastly, at this point I got those 15 base rooms with art from the team level design. And oh my god, what happened here? This over here is 40 days of work. I don't really understand if this was meant to be a joke or something, but I can assure you that it will not be in the game. The rooms were broken with enemies wandering outside of the map, unfinished terrain, questionable designs, and PC burning amounts of grass. So I had to redo all of them from scratch. I completely understand that not everybody is an artist, but this one over here is what triggers me the most. Simply because, why? It's sad to see that some people see this project as a joke while I put my soul into every project that I work on, especially when everybody else in the team is working as hard as possible, but I guess everybody experienced this in some shape or form in any of the team projects in the school. Anyway, all of the 15 base rooms are done, so the game is kinda playable now. The only thing missing is the actual end goal and end boss of the game, which are now the priorities for the future. I really like how the game feels to play. Let's hope that it will be something interesting when I actually finish it. Just a reminder, the deadline for the project is at the end of August, meaning I have around a month left and the game will be free on itch.io to download so that you can play it if you want. Till that point, check out my other videos and devlogs on other games that I work on, since I'm working on free game projects currently, and also subscribe if you like what I do here, because there will be more devlogs and a lot more of in-depth tutorials and how I do stuff in the future. We are also slowly getting to the 1000 subscribers, which is really nice, and I'm really thankful to all of the people responsible for it. But that's enough for me, I'm done, and until next time.